Welcome back to the Englit Hit. 5 things about Slim in Of Mice and Men. Number 1, he's respected and trusted. Slim isn't the kind of character who feels the need to compensate for an inadequacy or an insecurity. So unlike Curly, who tries to gain power by the way that he appears, his attire, through the exploitation of his wife, through the way that he uses his physicality and his strength, Slim is someone who doesn't kind of need to use those things because he's genuine. He is who he is, and there's no kind of lying or facade on the outside, no show. Slim is you get what you see on the tin with Slim, and partly that respect and trust is shown through the way that the other members of the ranch treat him. So Carlson stepped back to let Slim precede him. There's a sort of social hierarchy here, and Carlson physically shows that he can kind of grasp the qualities that Slim brings. Now, there's lots of things that Carlson is blind to, but he does understand what is advantageous in the world in which they exist. And Slim's skills, which we'll go on to in the next slide, and also the way that he approaches the world with a sort of sensible, rational outlook, is something that Carlson can grasp. And so he allows Slim to walk in front of him. There's a sort of respect and trust there. More on the trust side, when George is telling Slim about Lenny and their past, George looked over at Slim and saw what Steinbeck describes as the calm, godlike eyes fastened on him. And there's a sense of George confiding in Slim. Slim is someone, and that reference to God is almost like he's kind of someone he would go to confess. And there is a sense of sin, isn't there? There's something that they've done wrong in the previous ranch, a shame and a stigma that comes with having run away from their previous place of work. And Slim sort of he opens himself in a way that allows people to sort of give up their secrets to him, knowing that he won't use them to exploit them. So Slim's someone to be trusted. And you get that as well with the phrase he neither encouraged or discouraged him. This idea that Slim is a neutral, impartial observer. He's someone that you can trust, even in a place like 1930s America where people are trying to get one up on each other, survival of the fittest type atmosphere. Slim seems to kind of contravene that. He goes against, subverts what you would expect from someone. Maybe that comes from a little bit of his permanence on the ranch and the status that he's acquired being there. But it's not just Carlson, it's wit as well, and we see that in him wanting to show Slim the magazine. So did I show you this, Slim? It's like anything exciting, anything that they're proud of, which is it's kind of like wit as a small child, proud of something. I know it's not something he's created, but it's a friend who's achieved something, who's been successful, and he wants Slim to see it. And so Slim is kind of like a father figure on the ranch, someone you go to with things when you find something interesting. And it's not just wit or the sort of the sort of standard members of the ranch, but it's also Crooks, who is marginalised and discriminated against, and yet he respects Slim. Now that's perhaps the most telling of the people that respect and trust Slim, because it shows that Slim reaches out to those who are ostracised in society. And in many ways, Slim is kind of like the idealistic character within the novel. He's someone that Steinbeck is gone to a lot of effort to describe in divine terms, magisterial terms. And so it's like he's pointing a big arrow at Slim and saying, look at this guy. This is the one that approaches the world in the right way. Secondly, Slim is skilled. So we see that perhaps most in that long description of him when he's first introduced. No other character is given such a rich description of his qualities, and almost everything is positive in this opening description. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll just pick out a few different things, and you can pause the video and read a few of my ideas, and you might have ideas of your own. But just the way that he stands in the doorway when he comes in. So doorways are sort of entrances and exits, and we saw earlier with Carlson letting Slim precede him, it seems that Slim's in control of what happens on the ranch. So he makes the calls, the decisions, the important decisions, like when Curly's wife dies, he kind of calls the shots, tells everyone what to do. And he also, when Curly gets his hand crushed by Lenny, he sort of says, he kind of manages that situation. And so a doorway is sort of symbolic of sort of what people entering, people exiting, change, and Slim is standing in that doorway. He's tall, he takes up the whole doorway. He also holds a crushed Stetson hat under his arm, and there's power there, a sort of a threat of violence. And it's important because in 1930s America, particularly with a manual labour job like the one that he has as a jerkline skinner, sort of the lead driver of a team of mules, he's got to be strong and physical and almost violent. And also where there's the threat of people exploiting you in this sort of society, you need that the ability to use violence if you need to. And Slim is a more permanent member of the ranch. We see that through his description twice as a jerkline skinner. He's someone who's there because he's able to do something that the others aren't. And the way his skills are described is quite something, isn't it? So he's capable of driving 10, 16, even 20 mules at a time. So that adverb "even," with this list, it's just like almost incredulous at how good Slim is at doing his job. And then we get this sort of rich description of something that he's able to do. He's capable of killing a fly on the wheeler's butt with a bullwhip without touching the mule. There's a sort of precision and sort of accuracy about what he does. But it's not just physically that he's skilled. He's a master craftsman. He moves with a majesty. There's a skill in how he approaches ideas and concepts, and that's important for Steinbeck because Slim is a character who sort of conveys something of Steinbeck's message in the story, and so he needs to be the kind of character who cuts through cliche and drivel and confusion and has a sort of authority, and that's what he's described as. Authority was so great, intensifier so great that his word was taken on any subject, be it politics or love. And there is a sense in which he's quite godlike, isn't there? So his hatchet face was ageless. Let's just move my face for a second. His slow speech had overtones not of thought, but of understanding beyond thought. So there's a sort of divine wisdom, I've said at the bottom. I've used the word down there, omniscient. So this idea of him being all-knowing. And really, if you want to kind of invest your message through a certain character, use him as a literary vehicle, then you're going to want him to be the kind of person that can sort of sit back and see everything and observe and understand, rather than just sort of react and be impulsive, a little bit like Witt and Carson, who run out to the barn to see the possibility of Slim and Curly coming to blows over Curly's wife. Right, number 3, he's a benevolent authority, a good authority, a loving authority. When we're first introduced to Slim, he has this interaction with Curly's wife, and he says, "Hi, good looking." It's almost like he knows her game. She's flirting with people because she wants connection and intimacy and companionship, and he sees that, and so he plays along with her game. He calls her good looking. It's like he's sort of flirting with her. Except he doesn't kind of allow it to exploit him. He doesn't let her sort of see any weakness in him. He's not the kind of person who's going to get himself compromised by having an affair with Curly's wife. And so when she says, "I'm looking for Curly," he jokes, "Well, you ain't trying very hard." Yeah, so he engages with her and allows her to sort of have that connection and companionship with him, but he doesn't let it go any further than that. And so he has this sort of authority over her, but he's kind in how he approaches that. When George and Lenny first arrive, he's one of the only people who looks at him without fear or suspicion of any kind. It's described with the adverb, "He looked kindly at the two in the bunkhouse." "I can see Lenny ain't a bit mean," Slim says. And it's like he's non-judgmental, isn't he? He's someone that sees the good in characters. But it's not just that he sees the good, he's benevolent, but he also has a sort of authority about moral judgments. So we're drawn to him as a sort of he has the final word to say about whether a character is good or bad. And so in issues of morality, he's a benevolent authority. Finally, he addresses Crooks by his name. So Mr. Slim, that's what Crooks calls Slim, and he calls Crooks Crooks rather than the stable buck or using the N-word. And so it's as if Slim draws in those on the fringes of society. He draws in Curly's wife without compromising himself. He draws in George and Lenny, who have an unusual relationship and could be viewed with scepticism and suspicion. He draws in Lenny, who's mentally disabled, and he draws in Crooks, who's black. And so that's why I'm sort of getting at this idea of maybe Slim represents something of what Steinbeck's trying to show through this microcosm of 1930s America. Fourthly, and I don't know where I'm going to put my face now, let's put it there for now, he recognises dignity and value of friendship. He sees that there's real worth to being friends with somebody. So when George and Slim are talking, it's described that Slim looked through George and beyond him. It's as if he doesn't just see the person and their circumstances, but seems to kind of understand a little bit of the history, the emotive side of a person, where Carlson sort of sees people as just workers, people who have a productive value. Slim seems to see something more, something of a person's humanity rather than just their kind of productivity. When this is perhaps best highlighted when Carlson goes out to kill Candy's dog, and Slim says, "You know what to do," and he tries, although Carlson doesn't let him, to convey to Carlson ambiguously, like not really clearly, that the Carlson should take a shovel to bury the dog, so to give the dog the dignity that it deserves in a proper burial. And Carlson doesn't understand, and so Slim has to say, "Take a shovel." But I mean, I see this as Slim sort of trying to protect Candy, because saying, "Oh, take a shovel," is like a little bit insensitive, isn't it? When your companion and your friend for many years is being taken away from you. So I'd say that, you know, here is an example of Slim sort of recognising the value of friendship. Slim comes in sometimes 2-3 times a night, Crooks says. Slim's a real Skinner. He looks out for his team. And so again, we see this idea of Slim drawing people in, acknowledging the isolation that Crooks must feel, being sort of isolated in the bunkhouse, in the stable, in the room off the back of the stable. And is this his attempt to kind of rectify that, to give Crooks what he needs? Because Crooks, of course, says, you know, you go sick if you haven't got anybody to talk to. And is Slim trying to sort of heal that? Slim came directly to George. This is at the end of the novel. Slim came directly to George and sat down beside him, sat very close to him. This is a hugely emotive sentence in the novel, and the adverbs, the adverbial phrases, help with that. So Slim came directly to George. This idea. Sorry, someone just came into the office. Slim came directly to George. So this idea of, like, you know, he has a real intention to kind of help George in this moment when there is a real problem. And it's not just that he sat down beside him, so which is important because it kind of mirrors how Lenny sits next to George by the pool at the beginning of the novel. So you've got that cyclical nature of the story. But then Steinbeck embellishes it with that extra adverbial phrase. So sat down beside him, sat very close to him. And this idea of proximity and, nearness, friendship and connection is all about being near someone, having someone there with you. Crooks talks about that, doesn't he, when he goes off on his rant to Lenny. And it's hugely intimate and affectionate, what Slim does at the end of the novel. Finally, he offers a hope, but a realistic hope. So he's not someone that sort of ignores the realism, the actual landscape of 1930s America. He understands what life is like, but he does try to reach out and provide companionship. So Candy looked a long time at Slim to try to find some reversal, and Slim gave him none. So it's not that Slim says, "Oh no, Candy, you can keep your dog, it's all fine." Slim does understand that what needs to be done. But at the same time, he does it in a sensitive way and understands Candy's pain. And is this moment, like Candy's dog, is sort of a Lenny, a foreshadowing of Lenny and George killing Lenny, Candy's dog being killed by Carson? Is this a precursor for George and Lenny? So, Slim isn't going to give George any reversal. He, in fact, when Curly's wife dies, Slim hints at the fact that what needs to be done is that Lenny needs to be put out of his misery. And then at the end, Slim acknowledges that by saying, "You had her, George. I swear you had her. Come on with me." He led George into the entrance of the trail and up toward the highway. So there's hope here, isn't there? Because he leads George away. But there's an underlying sense of obligation. George had a responsibility to get rid of Lenny because he was a danger to society, and there wasn't the support that was needed to cater to Lenny's needs. But then again, he leads him up toward the highway, that symbol of the nomadic lifestyle, the life of migrant workers in 1930s America. Hopefully those 5 things were useful.